Hi, welcome. In this session, we are discussing on an interesting topic, limbic system. Let me tell you some fun-filled relations which are related to limbic system. Ram is male sheep. Just look at the ram's horn, how they are turned. Ammon's horn. Just like ram's horn, Ammon's horn are also turning. Ammon is a Greek mythological character. Hippocampus. The meaning of hippocampus is seahorse in Greek. To briefly introduce limbic system, this is mainly functioning for preservation of self and preservation of species. Preservation of self is by procuring food and protecting oneself, anticipating the dangers, and preservation of the species by indulging in sexual activity. As the name suggests, a system, a set of things working for common purpose. Limbic system is group of different things working as one to serve common function. This is picture showing telencephalon, diencephalon, mesencephalon, and hindbrain. All of this is telencephalon. At the junction of telencephalon and diencephalon, along this border, along this limbus is junction. We find certain group of cortical area which are associated with several other different components of deep group of nuclei, limbic system. After this session, you will be able to briefly introduce what is limbic system. We already did it. You will be able to enumerate the functions of limbic system, mention the components of limbic system, which are cortical and subcortical group, outline the Papez circuit, and enlist the related applied anatomical aspects. To enumerate the functions of limbic system, it is strongly associated with emotional aspects of behavior, especially centered around preservation of self and preservation of species. Preservation of the self by procuring food, anticipating the danger, acting appropriately at particular situations. Preservation of the species by indulging into sexual activities. Both these, first, what I mentioned, are strongly bound with emotions, and they have edge with olfaction and recent memory as well. Visual responses accompanying emotions. Here, retention of recent memory is one of the important aspect here, which serves as bank for taking particular decision at different situations. Fear or anxiety of previous memories will make the person to run away from the situation. Pleasure of previous memory can make the person to indulge in particular activity. Feeling of pleasure related to survival, both with procuring food as well as sex, are related with limbic system. This also integrates olfaction, visual and somatic responses. Note here, Olfaction is bypassing thalamus. To mention the components of limbic system, there are two components: cortical, which are related to the surface of the cerebrum, and subcortical, which are located deep inside diencephalon. Cortical areas are limbic lobe and hippocampal formation. We are looking at these in detail in a while. Subcortical areas are hypothalamus, that's mammillary body, amygdala, thalamus, septal area, and olfactory bulb. This is medial surface of the cerebrum. This white colored body is corpus callosum. Splenium, rostrum here. Below the rostrum, it is subcallosal gyrus, cingulate gyrus, whatever is shown in yellow color. Isthmus, which joins the cingulus gyrus with parahippocampal gyrus till uncus. Whole of this is known as limbic lobe. We can see on the inferior surface of the cerebrum here, this is parahippocampal gyrus till uncus. This is called parahippocampal gyrus because this is just related to hippocampal gyrus, which is much more deep inside on the medial aspect. Here we can see the same cingulate gyrus, isthmus, and parahippocampal gyrus and uncus. Much more deep laterally to this parahippocampal gyrus, which is shown here. After pulling the parahippocampal gyrus, we are observing a dentate gyrus, which is having transverse tooth-like gyri. This is dentate gyrus, which is part of hippocampus. We shall look at hippocampus in detail in a while. Let us take vertical section like this, I mean the coronal section of the brain, to observe this area, both parahippocampal gyrus and dentate gyrus or hippocampus. This is coronal section of, you can observe here, this is brainstem, and here is parahippocampal gyrus, which is getting folded inside to form hippocampus. Here is dentate gyrus, which we saw previously. The same picture of this side has been enlarged in a diagrammatic manner. Here you can see this is parahippocampal gyrus, which is here, which is getting folded inside to form this part is known as hippocampus. This is hippocampus. This is dentate gyrus, which was here. Hippocampus continues with parahippocampus in a transitional material. This is called subiculum. So this structure just appears like sea monster, seahorse. That's why we call this hippocampus. This is parahippocampus. Let us look at in detail of this hippocampus. Hippocampus is oldest cortex. This is known as allocortex. Parahippocampus is neocortex. This is just adjacent to hippocortex, and this is subiculum. When we observe in hippocampus, it has only 3 layers of cerebral cortex. Usually in parahippocampus, we find 6 layers. Subiculum shows transitional phase from 3 to 6 layers of cerebral cortex. This is dentate gyrus. This is fimbria, which is outpouring tract from hippocampus. This picture shows dissection of cavities of lateral ventricle. This is anterior horn, this is posterior horn of lateral ventricle. At the floor of lateral ventricle on the medial aspect, we find formation of hippocampus. Here we can say this is hippocampus and this is dentate gyrus. Hippocampus with its projection fibers, we can see here this is fimbria and fornix. This is like a curved horn, Ammon's horn or ram's horn. In the lateral aspect, this expanded part of the hippocampus looks like foot of an animal. The meaning of pes is foot, that is also known as pes hippocampus. Let us look at it in a diagrammatic fashion. Right-sided, you can see this is pes hippocampus and this is fimbria going to form the body of the fornix. This fornix continues forward into column of the fornix to end in mammillary body on either sides. This is dentate gyrus on the medial aspect, medial to fimbria. Dentate gyrus has separate projections, which is most rudimentary part of the hippocampal formation. Both-sided hippocampus with fimbria. Fimbria are converging in the center to join to form the body of the fornix. This is commissural fiber. We call it as hippocampal commissure. Fornix divides to form two columns which join to mammillary bodies on either sides. Mammillary bodies are parts of hypothalamus. Very near to the mammillary bodies, we can find here related to anterior horn of the lateral ventricle amygdala bodies. Let us look at where they are exactly located in next picture. Outlines are showing lateral ventricle here. This yellow colored part is amygdala, which is located near the temporal pole in the anteriormost part of roof of lateral ventricle. The tail of the caudate nucleus is in contact with amygdala. Here we can observe the same things. Pes hippocampus or hippocampus. These are the projection fibers. Crest of the fornix, body of the fornix. On one side we can see column of the fornix ending in mammillary body. We are also observing here there is one more type of projection going out from the dentate gyrus, which is above the corpus callosum. You can see here this is gyrus faciolaris, indusium griseum, and finally it projects into septal area. This is, however, very rudimentary part of hippocampal formation. Let me recollect cortical and subcortical components of limbic system. The yellow colored one here is limbic lobe of cortical part, cingulate gyrus, isthmus, parahippocampal gyrus. Hippocampal formation is also cortical component. It has its own projection, hippocampal projection, fornix, column of fornix ending in mammillary body as well as septal area. Mammillary body is part of hypothalamus and septal area is here. Both of these are in subcortical component. Anterior nucleus of thalamus is here, which receives information from mammillary body. Amygdala is here, which is receiving information from olfactory bulb. All these septal area, olfactory bulb, amygdala, mammillary body, anterior nucleus of thalamus, they form subcortical component. There was, however, a rudimentary part of hippocampal formation we have seen projecting from dentate gyrus into gyrus faciolaris and indusium griseum into septal area, which is above the corpus callosum. Let us look at the functional components for each of these. Limbic lobe is one which conveys the information to hippocampal formation. Hippocampal formation is associated with short-term memory, which converts it into long-term. The damage to hippocampal formation can result in anterograde amnesia. This is commonly involved in Alzheimer's disease. Hypothalamus controls autonomic nervous system, internal hormones of the body. Visceral responses to emotions are mediated by mammillary body. Amygdala is chiefly involved with fear and anxiety. It is important in self-preservation. Thalamus regulates Emotions related to limbic system. Most common group of nuclei involved with thalamus are anterior group of thalamic nuclei. Septal area is the one which is pleasure center for sexual orgasm. Olfactory bulb helps in memories of food and sexual behavior by putting all the informations through olfaction to limbic system. Sexual behaviors are most commonly seen in lower animals with pheromones. Existence of neural pathway in the brain thought to be involved in the cortical control of emotions. This was explained by Dr. Papez in 1937. This is all those cortical and subcortical components of limbic system. Papez circuit explains that there is a circular connection which are because of interconnection of different neurons from hippocampus back to hippocampus. From hippocampus, projection fibers run here through fornix, fimbria fornix and anterior column of the fornix into mammillary body. This is hypothalamus. From hypothalamus to thalamus, anterior group of nuclei of thalamus. From thalamus to cingulate gyrus, thalamus cingulate projections. And back from cingulate gyrus to the hippocampus through limbic lobe. This circular circuit is known as Papez circuit. To mention related applied anatomical aspects, damage to hippocampus results in anterograde amnesia. It is also involved in Alzheimer's disease, which is responsible for recent memory. Amygdala is the one which is helping in self-preservation by anger, rage, fear, anxiety, which are emotionally seen when it is stimulated. When amygdala is damaged, it results in mellowing down effect. Hyperorality, more eating, and hypersexuality in a person can be seen, and this is known as Kluver-Bucy Syndrome, which is bilateral damage of amygdaloid bodies. In such conditions, person even cannot recognize facial expressions of other person. He is emotionally blind to facial expressions.
This ends the class of Limbic System. Have a good day.